everybody, this is Sean Riley with Riley Real Estate and MassHomesale.com with this week's Q&A Saturday video. This week we're going to answer the question of what are closing costs. So closing costs are the cost to close on the transaction of buying or selling a piece of real estate. This is important to talk about because a lot of people don't think about these kind of things. So especially as an investor, these are important because these are costs to us, and especially in a situation where we're going to buy, fix, and resell a property, these directly reduce our bottom line. So last week we talked a little bit about what are the true costs of rehabbing a house, and some of the big costs that people tend to forget about are the ones involved with buying and selling the property and all the costs involved with that. Beyond that, for people who've never bought a house, sometimes it's kind of jarring for them to see how much it costs just to buy the house without including the actual cost of the house. And for people who've never sold a house, same thing. They're surprised at how big of a percentage other people get of their sale price when they go to sell a place. So the basic things that go into closing costs, things that you typically see in a retail sale. So seller lists something on the MLS, a buyer with an agent finds it, and they agree on a sale price. That's your normal, everyday type of transaction. So the big things that generally go into that are, on the buyer's side, their mortgage origination type costs, and for the seller, their real estate agent commissions are the big things on either side. But there's a whole bunch of other things. So there's always going to be some sort of title, escrow, attorney type fees, depending what state you are, how things are handled. In Massachusetts, we are an attorney state, not a title company state. So you would think more of your attorney costs and the attorney costs for the bank, which is typically paid by the seller. By the buyer, as well as their own attorney fees if they have their own attorney, or some additional fee if they use the same attorney. There's always going to be recording fees. You have to record mortgages, you have to record mortgage discharges, you have to record the deed. If you're homesteading, you record that. So those are the things that go to the government in order to have the stuff on public record so they're in full force. These generally aren't that expensive, but they do add up if you have a lot of things going on. Beyond that, there are... so let's start on the buyer's side. So when you buy a property, if you're using financing of any sort, there's going to be some origination cost usually. There's going to be, for a typical bank loan, there's usually an origination fee. That can be discount points if you are trying to get a better interest rate. There's usually prepaid interest, prepaid escrows, so you have to pay some amount of your taxes and insurance up front. Even if they're part of your mortgage payment, you have to pay so much of it up front, basically to make sure that the bank is protected in case you default right away. There are the recording fees that we talked about. It's also going to be things like an appraisal fee. Often you pay that beforehand. Sometimes you pay for it at the closing. Usually you pay for it beforehand. If you get a home inspection, you have to pay for that. Again, that's usually something you pay for beforehand, but these are all costs that go into buying a property. On the selling side, again, the biggest thing is usually real estate commissions. Even if you sell it for sale by owner, you often have to pay some amount of fee if the buyers have an agent. You don't have to, but it's a lot harder to sell something for sale by owner if you aren't willing to at least pay the buyer's agent something, because then that's just an added cost the buyer has to deal with. Again, all the recording fees. It's a little more straightforward. You have your attorney fees. You don't have as many garbage fees that you see from banks for the buyers. But the commissions are usually by far the biggest expense, so the seller gets hit the hardest there. It's also pretty common for buyers to ask for closing cost credits, so you're basically paying a lot of their costs as well. This is pretty common because the biggest segment are first-time home buyers, and a lot of them don't have two nickels to rub together while they're looking for a pot to piss in. So saving a couple $1,000s out of their pocket on that side might actually just be crucial for them to be able to buy your property, which, again, that makes it a little more risky too, if they don't even have a couple $1,000s on hand to be able to pay for their own closing costs. But that's just how the world works. So it's something you have to deal with if you are willing to go retail and work with people who are on FHA type programs and stuff like that, where they don't have much actual cash. So when you're selling a place, it's pretty typical to spend anywhere from 8 to 12% of your gross sale price in closing costs, between the commissions, credits, and then all those other fees. So it's pretty expensive to sell a house. Like I said, there's a pretty big variation there, and obviously if you do a for sale by owner, it could be a bit less than that, because that's assuming probably a 5 to 6% real estate commission. If you're not giving any, obviously it's much less. If you're only doing 2.5%, 3% to one agent, again you can reduce it quite a bit, but that's really going to be more like in your maybe a little under 8, but not a ton under 8. So, like I said, that's a lot of the little things, and like I said, there's stuff outside of, like when you're buying a house, if you get under contract and you get a home inspection, then you decide not to buy it, that's money down the drain, and you have to pay it again when you get the next place. If you pay for an appraisal on a loan, and then the loan falls through for some reason, again, that's money that's out the door, and you'll have to do it again when you buy another thing or get a new loan. So, like, there's other fees that can certainly add up when transactions fall apart. So, like I said, that's sort of the basics. So on my side, if we're thinking about the cost of me acquiring a property and the cost of selling one, and especially if you go back to last week's video where we talk about the true cost of rehabbing and reselling a house, you'll see that a lot of times people have to use private loans that are quite a bit more expensive than bank loans. So it could easily be 15 to 20% of the total resale value of the house that goes into the purchasing and selling closing costs. So that's a pretty big thing to consider, and a lot of people don't consider that when they're trying to sell me deals. New wholesalers especially have a problem with this. It's not their fault; they just haven't been taught right. So this is one of the things I hope people get out of this video, is they learn these kind of things. So again, you see something that's like $300,000 purchase, and with your what you're trying to sell it for plus your rehab, and they leave $30,000. That's a money loser, because that's probably going to get eaten up just by closing costs if you didn't take any of that into account. But anyway, so like I said, a little bit for the retail buyers, a little bit for the retail sellers, quite a bit for the investors and people trying to sell to the investors. If you have any questions or comments, as always, leave them below. If you have any questions that you'd like to see answered in one of these videos, please post it on our Facebook page, our Twitter account, or send an email to info@masshomesale.com. Happy New Year. This is the first video of 2016. Hope everything's going great. Make it your best year ever, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.